All right, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. So, about a week ago, I'd asked a question on our Facebook page, West Virginia Shooting and Reloading. Um, if anybody had any suggestions about content, if there's anything that anyone would like, for me to go over specifically, or anybody had any ideas of good topics to talk about. And my buddy, JW, he mentioned maybe start talking about some how to type stuff, something that I would tell a beginner. Um, I'm by far no pro, but I have been doing it a while and I've been around it a lot, and I've definitely got the equipment. I spent a lot of time learning what I'm doing. So I figured it's a good idea to maybe do a few segments on the process in itself. And I think what I'd like to do is start out with the most basic, but yet the most important part of the process, and that is your reloading manuals. Okay, so first off, when you buy a set of dies, like Lee, for example, you buy a set of Lee dies, not the RGB, but the actual Lee set. When you buy a set of Lee dies, they'll come with this little insert. Okay, this is for 708 Remington. Okay, if you open up this insert, inside of it, there's a lot of good information in here. It pretty much tells you how to load your ammunition. It tells you how to, prepare your cases. Tells you about your full length sizer, how to adjust it, how to, move your pin, just about everything. And it talks about trimming your brass, priming it, charging the case. I mean, just everything. It has pictures of the, different, tools involved. It talks about the crimp die, the seating die, and pretty much if you just take this out when you buy a set of dies and you follow this in itself, it'll tell you what to do. And then you'll notice on the other side there's data. The data that's on here is the same data that's going to be in your Lee book, which I'm going to go over that in a moment. But before you even get to this part of the process, before you even, like with me, before I even started loading, I'd gotten a couple manuals, and I'd studied the manuals. I looked on the internet, had the paperback books, or the hardback books, whatever you want to call them, physical copy, and I studied them, and I learned about it before I started doing it. And that's a lot of the problem now. I think a lot of guys and girls, they're just jumping into it, like, oh, I'm a low my own ammo, and because they know a guy at the range that does it. And yeah, it is a pretty simple process. You got your case, your primer, your powder, your bullet. But there's a little bit to it. You can't just throw those things together. Yeah, you could prime a case, dump some powder in it. I mean, just honestly, you can dump just about any powder in the case, stick a bullet in it, seat it, and it'll work. But you could damage your firearm, you could hurt yourself, and you're not going to have any kind of accuracy. So what you need to do is follow your manuals. Now, what I suggest doing, everybody, is different, and I don't want anybody, commenting saying, "Oh, you don't need to do it that way. You need to do." Look, this is what I did, and this is how I do it, and it's worked for me. Okay, I load, several calibers. I've got 7 or 8 presses. I've got dies. I've got all the stuff, and I shoot every week. So this is how I do it, and I've had good luck and good success doing it this way. And my way may not work for you, but this is what I do. So first off, what I would suggest is get yourself a few manuals. Okay, now I have a few Hornady manuals. I have the Lee manual. I have a Spear manual. I have couple Lyman manuals, Western Powders Reloading Guide. I get these annual manuals. I'll get one of those every year. I've got a couple other books laying around the house here too. Okay. Now, also, I keep these notebooks. Now, a lot of people may say this is a waste of time. But what I do is I keep notes of everything. I'll write down exactly, what I loaded, what powder I used, bullet. I'll take down notes, and I'll date it. What day, the date that I made that particular one, and then the card that I put in the box, I make that match whatever I have in my notebook. And the reason why is, say I go to the range and I test a load and it works really well, I can refer back to my book. I have this little black book I take to the range with me, and inside there I write out what worked well and what didn't, and that helps me keep track of what I'm doing. Okay, now for your manuals, so we will start with, let's start here with the Lee. That's probably one of the better ones to start with. Okay, so let's start with the Lee manual. All right, you can't go wrong with this manual. Okay, you just can't. You can get this one manual and load pretty much what you want to load. Okay, now there's several apps you can get, which I have a few of those, and all of that, but nothing beats a physical copy of the manual. Okay, and the Lee one is probably the best one to start with. So you open the manual, it's got all that preface and whatnot. I would recommend reading all of that, okay, because that tells you about what you're about to get yourself into. It's your table of contents. Now, here it talks about 21st century reloading, different cases, modern cartridges, all that sort of thing. Okay, if you look through this manual, remember the insert that I showed you that came out of the dies a moment ago? Well, if you look through this manual, a lot of that same information is in here, but it's just in more detail in this book. So in this, if you just flip to page 20, it starts with the shell holder, and it goes step by step what you need to do. Step by step what you need to do, all the way up to number 10, crimping your bullet. It's all right there. Okay, if you read all through it, it talks about accuracy, fun, talks with the Lee loader. Those are really good. It just goes into detail about everything. Bullet seating for accuracy, it just explains everything. Casting bullets, shotgun, just literally everything. Lubricating your cast bullets, just everything that you need to know about what you're getting yourself into. Okay, now this is an important page. Now, the annual manuals, these right here, those also have your burn rate charts, as do a lot of other manuals. Okay, it's always best to be familiar with this burn rate chart. And if you look, it shows the burn rates of each powder. Okay. Now, I wouldn't recommend using this to substitute powders. Okay. Now, I have used this to kind of research, what two powders may burn similar or whatever, but you still need to use your data. Okay. But there, it just lists all the powders. If you flip on through, it's still, got all the information. So I'd recommend reading all of that. Before you even start here, you need to start here. Okay. So, when you get to your data, this is your data section. Got your rifle data in the front, and then all your pistol data is toward the back. So what we're going to do, let's go to my favorite caliber, 22-250. So we're going to start here, and we're going to look at, let's just say we're loading 50 grain. Well, let's start at the very beginning here. So if you look up here on the first page, 22-250 Remington, if you look here, it has pretty much the details of that cartridge. The length, all the measurements, when it was introduced, everything, okay? And if you look at the data, it has the powder type, start grains, volume CC, which I'll talk about that in a minute. Your auto disc, we'll talk about that in a later segment when we go into tools. Your lead dipper, which I use those myself. And then it's got your velocity, feet per second. Then here you have your never exceed. That's the max you should do, okay? Your feet per second if you was at the max. Your pressure, which this is a very important thing to pay attention to. And then your overall length. Now your overall length, as you start loading, you may, want to load closer to the land, so you may load longer than that. But this is the best place to start, okay? So, say we're loading a 50 grain jacketed bullet. 50 grain VMAX, right? So that would be one of those, right? So we're looking here, 50 grain bullet, and we're going to look at our powders. And let's just say, hey, I got some Varget. So we got Varget, you got 34.5, and it can go all the way up to 37.5, right? Now, when it talks about the lead dipper, now when you buy a set of lead eyes, it comes with a dipper, okay? But you can also buy this kit. Now, I use these in all my precision rifle cartridges. This is the way I do it. Now, a lot of guys, they use, powder dispensers, and they use, all this electronic stuff and this and that and the other. But in my opinion, if I use a dipper and say I'm loading 7-08, for example, and I use a dipper and I weigh every charge, I know exactly what is in each case. If I'm wanting to load 37.7 grains and I'm using a dipper and I weigh every charge, then I know each case has 37.7 grains of powder. That's the most consistent way. Now, I know there's electronic, this and that and the other, and I know, this is accurate and that's accurate, but nothing is going to be as accurate as doing it by hand, charge after charge. That's just me. That's just the facts. So, but anyway, so there's your manual. Now, let's move on to, let's put this one back, and let's get out what I like these Hornady manuals. And the reason why is when you find a cartridge, I love doing this. You find a cartridge, say 250 Savage, for example. It tells a little story about it. Okay, it talks about, when it started, where it came from. Has everything listed here. It has the gun they tested. The loads in. It has the type of, primer, just everything. Okay, the twist rate that was in the gun they tested. The trim length, the case length, everything. They have everything there. And then they have a little story about it, and then it usually recommends like some powders or some bullets or something. And you got your data. Okay, same thing. If you're looking at 257 Roberts, got the story, got everything you need. And it does that for every cartridge. Every single one. Okay. Now, with multiple manuals, okay, obviously data changes. They come out with new powders, new charges, new bullets, whatever. What I do personally, I like to compare. I will look at, say, I'll look in my annual manuals here. And let's just say 708 Remington. Say we're getting ready to load a 139 grain soft point bullet. It says stay ball 6.5, 45.9 to 51.0. Now, my older Hornady manuals is not going to have that data listed in it, right? So, in some manuals, you got some powders that's outdated, or, they don't make anymore, or whatever. So it's not going to be in these newer books. Okay, so it's good to have multiple manuals. In addition to that, it's good to have multiple manuals as a point of reference, because let's just say hypothetically, I'm looking here, 139 grain Hornady soft point, but I have 139 grain, spear bullet or something. Well, I can look here, and this is a good reference for that same bullet. Does that make sense? So, first thing I'd recommend to anybody who's wanting to start hand loading, get a manual and read it. Don't go on the internet. Don't go asking, questions on Facebook. Don't, it's, as ironic as it may sound, don't go watching videos on YouTube, try to learn what you're doing. Get a manual and read the manual. I can't stress that enough. Read the manual. Doesn't matter what manual you get one and read it. Learn it. Learn all about it. Learn about the powders. Learn about the burn rates. Just learn as much as you can, because what you're about to get yourself into, it is a great hobby. It's very enjoyable. It's very rewarding, but it can also be very dangerous. Get a manual and read it and learn what you're doing. I can't stress that enough. So, anyway, so thanks for watching. I'll do another segment on tools and the process, as far as going from, dirty case all the way to completed cartridge. Okay, so I'll do another video on that. We'll talk about priming tools. We'll talk about, benches. We'll talk about presses. We'll talk about dies. We'll talk about using a hopper versus dippers. We'll talk about scales, bullets, really kind of get into some detail about the process of loading in itself. But in the meantime, if you're interested in hand loading, get a manual. You can go on Amazon and get them all day long. Anybody that knows anybody who's into reloading, I'm sure somebody will sell you or loan you a manual until you can get one. Get a manual, read it, learn what you're doing, okay? Get familiar with it. And the same thing when you get some factory ammo, okay? Measure it, look at it, get familiar with what you're about to do. Then you can start loading. Then some powders, you can get you some primers, you can get you some bullets, right? You can start investing in your equipment. But the first thing you need is a manual, read the manual, and learn it. Learn the data, learn the burn rates, learn what happens if you don't size correctly. Learn about trimming your cases, learn about seating depth, learn about the difference in primers, right? Learn all those basics first, and then from there, once you figure all that out and learn all that, the sky's the limit with experimenting and trying different things and different combinations and different things and different rifles and all of this, right? First step though, get a manual, read the manual, and learn about it. Okay, for you veteran guys that already know this, if you watched all of this, sorry that it wasn't more exciting, but I'm sure you guys can agree. I did bring up some very good topics about reading a manual and learning what you're doing. For all you new guys that's starting to load, look, it's great. I wish you best of luck. I hope it works. But I can't stress enough, learn what you're doing, get a manual, read about it, and that's that. So, but anyway, so thanks for watching. I do want to give some recognition. We're over 300 views on our channel now, which is pretty cool. We had a handful of subscribers. So that's great. My main purpose for making this channel was just to kind of talk about reloading and shooting and enjoying the hobby and enjoying the sport and casting, and you know, maybe we can all learn something together. So you know, you guys that's already subscribed, I appreciate it. You guys that are watching my videos, I appreciate it. You know, feel free to share them, pass them along, try to get us some more subscribers, build it up. If anybody has any suggestions about any, you know, thing you'd like for me to talk about or cover, or, you know, topics or whatever, let me know. I'm still learning how to do this whole YouTube thing, so, you know, it's a learning process for me. So, but anyway, so thanks for watching. See you guys next time. And remember, if you ain't shooting, you should be reloading.